Hello everybody, it is July 12th, 2025 here in the United States of America. I'm back now. I took a bit of time off to get acquainted with now being on daylight. It's fantastic. I love being on day shift. It's much better than being on nights. I feel more energized. I have more time for things, more time for my family, more time to dedicate to this YouTube channel, and generally just more free time overall. I love it. I worked nights for 8 years, and I'm very glad to finally be done with it. So in today's video, well, before I get to that, actually, for those of you who didn't see my post, I will be doing videos now every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. They will be posted in between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. Generally, I try to start filming around 7 o'clock and then have it posted by 8. If I'm able to, I'll do the video a bit earlier, but I also have to put one of my daughters to bed every night. She usually lays down pretty early because she refuses to nap. So got to get her set up for bedtime, and after that, that's when I'm able to come up and do these videos. So everything should be posted by 8 o'clock on those 3 nights. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about tonight is I want to touch upon what happened with the Epstein list and why this particular outcome was always going to be the outcome that we got, no matter what people assumed would happen or hoped would happen. First of all, let's talk about President Donald Trump and his the intentions that he had when coming into office. Take a sip of wine first. Yeah, I'm drinking wine out of a mason jar. I live in Appalachia. Just kind of how it goes. We don't use fancy wine glasses. I do own some, but I prefer mason jars because, why not? But, so I think one of the mistakes that people made was there was an assumption based upon his rhetoric that President Donald Trump was going to be a kind of revolutionary and transformative figure within American politics. And the reality of Donald Trump, and this is just the objective reality of it, I'm not, saying anything good or bad about the man, but these were his intentions when coming into office. President Donald Trump was not a radical revolutionary. He was going to burn the entire system down and replace it from the ground up. He was never going to do that. He's never been a political radical. What President Trump is someone who wanted to come into the existing system, to the existing superstructure of the American bureaucracy, like somebody who would come into our institutions and agencies and overhaul them, to transform them, to redirect them in a way that would benefit the country as a whole, to get rid of corruption, to clean up, so to speak, but never to tear down, never to burn down. He's going to come in and put a new facade on things, fix some of the structure, redo some of the framework, fire some people, replace some people, but ultimately take the American political system and redirect it in a way that he would see fit as being good for the nation. And that included keeping the people that existed within the superstructure generally there. Now, he occasionally would threaten to have people primaried out if they didn't enact his will, but all the neocons and neolibs and old guard Republicans, bureaucrats, the people within the deep state, so to speak. What President Trump hoped to do was to leverage his power and popularity as the president to redirect them to do the things that he wanted to do, which is why you see President Trump still associated with people like Lindsey Graham, which is why he associated people with like John Bolton in his first term, why he still rubs shoulders with people that are clearly on the neoconservative side of things, even though he adamantly seemed to be against neocon foreign policy and against interventionism. What President Trump wants to do is take these existing people and redirect them and bend them to his will, essentially, but work with them within the system to try to force them back into line and force them into this new version of the Republican Party that he has formed with his very loyal and what's the word for it? Loyal and oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought on that. It's very loyal and energetic base. We'll go with that. Maybe I haven't had enough of this yet. I don't know. That was always what Trump was going to do. He was never going to do anything that would jeopardize that entire system crashing down and creating chaos. And I think it's become readily apparent to President Donald Trump, and I'm not making excuses for him. I'm not saying really anything one way or the other. I'm not making a judgment, although my personal opinion is, when things get this bad and the bureaucracy is this corrupt and this many politicians are doing morally questionable things, maybe at that point it is time to tear the system down, so to speak, and replace it with something else. When the rot gets so bad, sometimes you just can't put extra boards up to keep the house standing. That is my personal opinion. But someone in Trump's position who never had the intention of tearing the whole system down and replacing it. Like, he was never going to get rid of the CIA and the FBI altogether. He was going to put new people in charge of these institutions and then redirect them in a way that he saw fit. So when it comes to the Epstein files, and this is my opinion on what happened, the Epstein files are so damning and have so many people on them that releasing them would cause the system to crash. You would have members of both parties, prominent and powerful figures within both parties, being forced to resign from office due to their associations with Epstein. You would have to have elections to replace all these people. You would have the amount of people that would be forced to resign or on this list would cause such resentment and mistrust from the public that it might actually cause them to turn on the entire party as a whole, the Republican Party. That's what I'm talking about. You might destroy the Republican Party completely, and the Democratic Party too, because I guarantee you there's plenty of people from both parties on this list, as well as donors, prominent scientists, athletes, people in Hollywood. You might take the entire American political and cultural superstructure and cause it to come collapsing down because of this. It's a very real possibility, and I think that he probably saw everything that was on the list and all the names that were on it and decided that, you know what, for the sake of pragmatism, that releasing this list, although yes, it would make a lot of people happy and it would give people a real sense of justice, would cause so much collateral damage that in the end it wouldn't be worth it. Same thing with the JFK files. Everybody already knows generally who was involved in the JFK assassination, but if this information became readily available to the public, it could cause our relations with our allies to change. It could cause Americans' relationship with the government to completely change. This distrust of the government that's already there would just skyrocket tenfold. And maybe that's not something they felt they really wanted to deal with. That's what I think happened. Do I think Trump's name is on the list? Was he actually involved in any kind of nefarious things that he could have been, blackmailed for? I don't believe that, because I think the other party would have used that against him in a heartbeat if that was the case. Because keep in mind, they also probably know who's on these lists as well. They have insiders within the administration. They have insiders within the intelligence agencies. They know who's on this list. Everybody, I think, within Washington probably knows, has a general idea of who's on this list. And also, too, here's a real possibility that people need to think of. And again, I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that this is likely how things played out. Epstein made a concerted effort to associate with every rich and powerful person that he possibly could, again, to try to find people that he could gain leverage over for the intelligence services that he worked for. I would say that he wasn't always successful. It is a fact that there are quite a few people who associated with Epstein that weren't actually guilty of any crimes. They never really sunk his teeth into. Brett? It's not Brett Weinstein. What's his? Eric, I believe. Eric Weinstein, I think, was associated with Epstein. I had a couple meetings with him, but nothing ever came of it. From what I understand, Epstein's past relation with Trump never really went anywhere. Never really went to a place where Epstein could have gathered information on President Trump to actually blackmail him in any way. And from what I understand, Trump actually cut his relationship off with Epstein many years back when it was apparent that Epstein was up to some very shady things. There were quite a few people that associated with Epstein that probably weren't guilty of anything. Again, it was his job as an intelligence asset, I believe, to mingle with as many people as possible. So just because somebody was seen with Epstein, or there was some record of them meeting with Epstein, doesn't necessarily mean they were guilty of anything. So there were probably plenty of people on this list as well that would have been collateral damage, so to speak. Maybe his friends and colleagues that, although present on this list, weren't actually guilty of anything. But just being associated with the people that were guilty would probably ruin their political careers, and they'd be forced to resign from office or whatever position they hold. Again, I'm not excusing any of this. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying any of this is a good thing. But I'm saying this is the likely reason why that the president was so initially gung-ho about getting this information out there. I do believe that, you know, people within his administration or within MAGA or with the president himself fully intended on releasing this information to the public, and then once they became aware of the contents of this information, how many people were actually on this list, they were too afraid to burn the system down. And I think they took a calculated risk and hoped that their supporters a year or 2 years from now would forget about this and maybe, you know, weigh the positive things the administration has accomplished against this issue with Epstein, and then still decide to support the president despite the fact that this one promise was blatantly not fulfilled. I think, unfortunately, though, the American public is so tired of our bureaucracy, tired of the corruption, tired of being lied to by politicians, that this might have been the final straw for them. So this actually does put the Republican Party at risk in the primaries. It puts the MAGA movement at risk within the primaries. Now, how many people were so excited and hopeful that President Trump was going to be that radical revolutionary that finally cleaned up the American political system, and had their hopes dashed against the rocks because, again, they assumed that President Trump was someone that he's not. And I'm not saying anything bad about the president. I'm saying that this is just the reality of President Trump. He was never going to come in and tear the entire system down. He was going to try to fix the existing system, to prop it back up, and bend it in a way that he saw fit. Like USAID or whatever it's called was never going to be completely done away with. The useful parts, or parts that he saw useful, were going to be kept. The useful foreign money, money going to foreign causes, was going to be kept. The stuff that was considered waste was going to be discarded and done away with. So, again, people were surprised that, yes, the U.S. is still sending out money to NGOs, is still funding things in other countries, because the assumption was that all foreign aid was going to be cut and this was all going to be done away with. And that's just based on fanciful thinking. That was never going to happen. And again, I'm not making excuses for it. I'm not saying any of this is a good thing. But if you look at it from like a strategic, political perspective, this is really the only explanation that makes any sense at all. So if you're somebody out there who supports President Trump, well, it's your prerogative if you wish to support him still or not. My own personal political opinions, I try not to voice too much on this channel. That's not really what this channel is for. I like to talk about the decisions leaders make, the options that they weigh, and why they make those decisions, and the possible outcomes to those decisions. Like, this channel is not really about my personal opinion, so to speak, or moralizing on certain issues, although I do have stances on certain things, obviously. But I'm not going to get up here and lament the fact that this list wasn't released. From a pragmatic political perspective, I'm not surprised at all that it wasn't. It's just how things go. I think a lot of Americans, unfortunately, are a bit naive when it comes to politics. They're surprised by things that, frankly, I don't think they should be surprised by. But anyways, that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video today. I'm not really going to touch upon this Epstein issue anymore. I guess we'll see what the future holds and what happens. I'm sure everyone's interested to see whose names are actually on that list and the extent of this supposed blackmail ring, but whether we actually find that information out, there's a good chance we won't. Just like the Kennedy assassination, everyone kind of knows what happened, but you'll never get full confirmation, I think, because of the damage they're afraid it would do to the American government. But anyways, I'll be back Monday, sorry. I'll be back Monday with another video. Not sure what topic I want to talk about just yet. jump on Twitter for a bit and figure out what interests me the most, and I'll be back then with another video. But everyone out there, have a great night, and I'll see you then.